Shamini, what is the nicest thing a non-family member has ever done for you?
You know, the nicest thing that a non-family member has ever done for me was help me understand that my enemy was actually my teacher. And I know that sounds wild, but maybe many of you have had this experience. And the person was Dr. Paul Mills. Now, some of you might have had the pleasure of experiencing Paul Mills at the Reuniting Science and Spirituality Summit, where he talked about non-duality. Paul was actually my graduate mentor. That is, he was my mentor during graduate school. I went to a very, you can say, in-the-box program in clinical psychology, and he was my research mentor in psychoneuroimmunology. And, you know, I've come from kind of, you can say, a long line of biofield researchers, those who were interested in studying the human energy field, studying healing, and was kind of coming from a paradigm and a tradition and with mentors who had really kind of been persecuted, you know, or who felt persecuted. And so I kind of saw that division and that kind of us versus them thinking. And quite frankly, I kind of came in with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, right? I was sure that this in-the-box program wasn't going to let me study what I wanted. And in fact, when I decided to go to this program, which was a really top-rated clinical psychology and research program, I called up Paul, who was to be my mentor. And I said, well, I'm just telling you right now that I know I want to do a study in energy medicine. And before I even consider coming there, would you support it? And for those of you who've known and experienced Paul, you'll appreciate this. There was just sort of a breath and kind of a, yeah, I think I could support you in that, you know, just very clear, very neutral, very loving. And I thought, great, you know, and I came into this program and of course I, you know, was wanting to study something that was completely out there and, you know, I had a chip on my shoulder. Long story short, I said the wrong thing to the wrong person. And it was just basically a discussion we were having about cultural, you know, cultural appropriation and, you know, what people do when they acclimate from one culture to the other. And I was having this argument with one of our professors who happened to be the director's girlfriend, that I didn't agree with her that, you know, all minorities assimilated to white culture, because from the Indian perspective, sometimes you see, especially Indians that are more dark-skinned will assimilate to the black culture because they actually, you know, integrate there. But clearly I was saying this with a lot of force and fire, and it didn't sit well with them. And before I knew it, there was sort of this case being built up against me to the point where, you know, I was being reviewed to potentially be let go of this program. So it was pretty intense. It was very, you know, it was very intense. And you can imagine as a young strapling graduate student, you know, coming in with this chip on my shoulder, I was sure that this director just completely had it out for me. And again, you know, we were all being persecuted. Everyone is being persecuted. And I just remember sitting with Paul and Paul saying to me, you know, Shamini, sometimes these people that we think are our enemies are actually here to teach us a lesson. And it's a lesson that's actually for our spiritual growth. It's not to teach us a lesson by putting us down or whatever. And I want you to just kind of sit with that and think about it, you know, and so I did. And I realized that, you know, while I may not have felt like this case that was building up against me, you know, was justified, I was learning a valuable lesson in humility and communication. And I had to ask myself, what do I really want? You know, what am I really here for? What am I doing? Am I here to fight? You know, am I here to fight the system? Am I here to, you know, do that? And is that really going to help me achieve my goal? And Paul really helped me understand that. And it was a huge spiritual life lesson for me. And to this day, when I encounter someone that, you know, I feel a resistance with or a struggle with, take a step back and I think about what is the goal? And is there a common goal here, right? And today, in today's world where we, you know, we're almost being force-fed division. So important. I think back on that lesson all the time. You know, is there really a perceived enemy? Is the enemy really the person in front of me? Or is it a misunderstanding? Is it a miscommunication? And how can we work toward a common goal? So I really thank Paul for that. And, you know, his continued embodiment of spirituality, of generosity, of grace. He's taught me a lot over the years. And really, really do appreciate that lesson. Oh, and by the way, there is a happy ending to that particular story, which is one, I didn't get kicked out. Paul actually mentored me to get National Institutes of Health funding for the first ever study in energy medicine done at UCSD, which is now published in the journal Cancer, where we looked at energy healing for fatigue and breast cancer survivors. It was a wonderful, groundbreaking study. And I ended up, in a way, kind of befriending the director many years later when I was pregnant with my first child, and of course had grant funding to support me. Instead of, you know, what she could have done, which was really to crack down on me for, you could believe me, that happens, you know, how dare you get pregnant, you know, during graduate school. She was incredibly supportive, and I grew to understand her more. So, you know, again, befriend thy so-called enemy is a great lesson, and one of the nicest things that I've been taught by a dear mentor.